Now listen to this. I've been honored and appreciative to get my hands on, use, and test many different types of knives. Most of late have been great all-rounders, utilitarian, can do it all type of knives. But every once in a while, a knife comes along that is strictly purpose-driven. I sincerely believe that Zeke Menacho wrote the name of this knife down before he designed it. Then every line, every measurement, every choice of design would completely encapsulate the name and the perfection that is the Nomad Bushcrafter. As a disclosure, I do not ever want to sound like I'm selling you a knife, as it's not mine to sell and it's not my commission to make. My goal is to share my passion and experience with the viewer. And I gotta say, this knife is special. Listen, I know, knives are subjectional, it's an individual thing. But the one thing about this knife that is probably my favorite thing about the knife is how the handle completely molds into your hand. Your fingers kind of just grab the grip of this G10 and it molds right into your finger grip and your palm. This is probably one of the most comfortable knives I've ever held in my hand. At all times, I felt perfect grip. Glass breaker at the back that you have use with it. I have large hands, but I felt I had perfect grip, perfect control over the blade and the tip. Just it's one of the most comfortable knives I ever held in my hand. And for what it's used for and what you need for in terms of bushcrafting and wood processing, unbelievable. And it really doesn't surprise me that the handle is so similar to the Nomad EDC, because the Nomad EDC also was an incredibly comfortable knife, and you could see how the handles are very similar into how Zeke designed this. But this Bushcrafter, in terms of the handle, is just next level, even more comfortable than the EDC was. So he kind of just followed up with giving you a comfortable handle like Nomad EDC. The difference is obviously the blade. Now the blade, you can see how it's arced to be a perfect bushcrafting geometric that would process like the best bushcrafter out there. Perfectly comfortable, and the 90-degree bevel on top of the spine is a perfect method of striking a ferro rod, which you'll see. But it's just, the blade was completely sculpted and made to be bushcraft. In terms of a cutter, guys, this thing is an absolute cutting gem. I mean, it has probably one of my favorite type of grinds. Saber grind with the convex cutting edge, the Bolo N690 steel plus cryo. It's got an HRC of around 5961. This thing kind of went through cutting materials that I use day in and day out with other knives with absolute pleasure and ease. You can see the quality of a knife when you cut the same materials that you cut with other knives, how good and well done the edge was made. And that convex cutting edge is probably my favorite types of grinds on a knife. It went through everything with no problem. I would give it a rating of a cutting geometric of around 8.7 out of 10, and I would give it a sharpness level around 9 out of 10. It's really that good. It came so damn sharp out of the box, and that cutting geometric is excellent. It's going through the ratchet straps. I try to give you pretty much, industrial type of materials, and it went through everything extremely well. The rope, the ratchet straps, the electrical cable and all that. Really extremely well done. The cutting edge is actually at 3.9 inches. The blade length is 3.9, so it's pretty much the whole surface area of the blade. The overall length of the knife is around 8 inches. It's obviously a straight back, satin finish, wonderful G10 sculpted handle, machined handle that fits so incredibly well in the hand. Here you see I'm cutting the very elusive, very tough to cut, very tough industrial sandblast hose, which is steel reinforced. You can see how well it got through it with no problem. And I have had trouble. I have had trouble with other knives in the past, and I also found damage on the knife itself. I went through tire, steel reinforced tire, and the sandblast hose, and you'll see at the end, we're going to do the test to see if there's any chips or anything wrong with the edge whatsoever. Cutting through the shoe, cutting through the rubber, there was really nothing I couldn't throw at this knife that would stop it from working. It's just an incredibly good, tough spine, very sharp edge, great cutting knife. I am an extremely huge fan of this type of grind and of this design, of this particular Nomad design, a line of knives that Zeke Menacho made, and obviously Work Tuff Gear's craftsmanship is off the hook. Now, I'm definitely a novice in terms of wood processing, but I can tell you that even in my novice hands, I mean, just listen to the sound of the blade cutting into the wood. You know, just from the sound of it, how well it's actually slicing and cutting into the wood with no effort. Look at the curls it's making. Obviously, I'm trying to process some wood so I could end this video with a good Bushcrafting stricken from the knife fire. But it is just processing wood. It's a processing demon in terms of processing wood and making a campfire. Whatever you need to do in terms of Bushcrafting needs, this thing cuts into the wood like a freaking dream. Probably one of the best knives of this size or any size I've had in my hand that I've used to process wood before. Just did it with ease, even in my novice hands. I can only imagine in a professional's hands, someone who's really adept to working with knives, how incredibly happy they're going to be and comfortable they're going to be in terms of using this knife as their ultimate, at their sides at all times, ready to go camping knife. And just the steel that was chosen, the Boulder N690 steel, the type of grind, the grip, that really generous, very comfortable finger choil, very similar to the Nomad EDC. This thing was a dream. This thing was a dream to use, and you can see and hear how well this thing cuts. And here I'm obviously finishing it off, cutting into some lighter knot. This is some Home Depot special lighter knot that I'm kind of finishing this off. We're going to top off all of the wood shavings and try to strike a fire with this at the end of the video. And it handled even just the lighter knot, which is a pretty tough lighter knot from Home Depot. It handled it and sliced it extremely well. Obviously, it smells fantastic. So I worked on this for a little while. Enjoy this, the rest of this, as I basically try to get prepped up for a fire. But look how beautiful that looks. It smells great too. Batoning. Now, this knife only weighs about 6.2 ounces, but it completely handles so much more. It pushes so much more than the weight of the knife in terms of its solidity and how well it handles itself in terms of just banging this down on this hard firewood with a 3.9 millimeter spine and a really strong reinforced step. You don't have to worry about pushing this thing a little harder, even if you need to baton with it to process wood, which I'm doing now. It's an extremely tough knife. It handled itself so much more than the weight of its knife, only at 6.2 ounces. Now, testing the tip is not something I would normally do on all knives, but given the fact of where Tuff Gear's track record in terms of their heat tempering, given the fact of how well the spine, the geometric of the spine, how reinforced the tip is on this knife, I don't have any problem showing you a tip test on this knife because I have no doubt that the point is going to come off completely unscathed. It's really that powerful of a tip in terms of how the geometric of the knife is, and it handled everything extremely well. No damage, obviously. The spine is fine, the point is fine. It was just a lot of fun to kind of use this knife and show you how tough the freaking thing actually really is. Now finally, I'm showing you cutting into a steel reinforced tire, or at least whatever's left of it. Now this has chipped and caused many micro chips and micro abrasions on the edge on many knives that I've tested it on. So I'm actually curious at the end to see if there's any fractions or any breaks or any chips whatsoever, even if they're microchips on the blade itself from cutting into the steel reinforced tire, in which I also cut into the tubing, the steel reinforced tubing beforehand. Okay, so now this is the fingernail test where you kind of take your nail and you slide it right across the edge to see if there's any breaks. Now, if the edge is completely smooth, it should feel like you're spreading your nail against glass. I didn't feel any microchips on the edge whatsoever. I actually stole that trick from Jared from Neve's Knives, but don't tell him that. Perfectly smooth. I didn't feel any chips whatsoever, which is impressive, which would tell me that basically it's a great edge cutting geometric, great quality steel, and incredible heat tempering. And again, I have found these chips and micro abrasions, which are not terrible, but you see it when you cut into these types of materials, how you're going to find some problems with the edge. No problem with this edge whatsoever. I was very, very impressed with how this knife completely went unscathed. And I gotta tell you, it's still sharp. I don't need to cut paper to tell you this thing can keep on going. So at this point, I would ask, is this the best bushcrafting knife out there today? Listen, I don't think you can call any knife the best of anything, as there are a lot of great knives out there. But I can say with confidence, in my humble opinion, because of the absolute comfort, the use, the solidity, and performance, this is as perfect as a bushcrafting knife can be. This is definitely a Zeke Menacho's perfect brainchild and another Work Tough Gear masterpiece. Another important feature of any bushcrafting knife is a 90-degree spine where you can strike a ferro rod to. This definitely has that spine, and it was able to strike this ferro rod and light up this fire like a Roman candle. Unfortunately, I wasn't recording at the time, but it definitely did a great job. So while you watch this glorious fire burn, please don't forget to take a look at this video coming up next. And as always, guys, thanks for your support. Thanks for sticking around with my video all the way to the end. Much appreciated. Peace out, everybody. See you in the next video. Ciao.